all, this is Hoppianism for Dumbasses, episode 1. Do you want a path of peace and reasoning and exchange of honest discourse, or do you want a path of conflict, aggression, coercion, and violence? If you pick the first one, you're establishing a peace treaty of sorts, and you're presupposing certain conditions. These have to be analyzed. Everything you do, everything you say, believe, claim, disbelieve, deny, all are presupposing something. This is where Christian presuppositionalism comes from. And it's that realization that you can argue back and forth with each other's presuppositions, but the particular issues that are arguing presuppositions alone is never going to be enough to do what it's being used for, and it seems to be implicit relativism. Go listen to Mathoma's video of River Run's reading of Professor David Haynes' piece on that, and listen carefully. Give it some serious thought, and tell me if my understanding of that is fucking wrong. Folks, there's only one philosophical branch that can actually do presuppositional analysis. That can actually deduce and analyze the presuppositions and go beyond presuppositionalism. The transcendental argumentation. It is a form of fundamental deductive argumentation and analysis that is used to justify and validate things such as logic, metalogic, the laws of logic, epistemology, syllogisms, philosophy itself, the principles of the sciences, presupposition. It's pretty much a fundamental metaphilosophical deduction system. And it does this by exposing the necessary conditions for the presuppositions to be true and the necessary preconditions that entails for the possibility of said things to be true, and then proceeds from there. For example, X is a necessary condition for the possibility of Y, and W is the necessary precondition for the possibility of X to be true. There you go. That's kind of the formula. That's how I laid the formula out. You'll see this to varying degrees in Plato, Aristotle, and other ancient Greek and other philosophical works throughout the centuries. But it was Immanuel Kant that brought this all together and made it into a proper deductive, I guess, meta philosophical deductive formula. Maybe even, I guess, meta deductive. Sorry. Getting lost in it. Whatever. The point is, he realized this, and it's pretty important. Now, there was a man by the name of Barry Stroud. He had figured out certain problems in the way the transcendental formulations were done. These have since been addressed and responded to while conceding to his criticisms. Might as well link that in the description while I'm at it, along with all the other mountains of shit I got. Now, what's fucking preposterous? Religious apologists, including all the Christian apologists on the planet, to claim their transcendental argument system structure they have is presuppositional apologetics. It's fundamentally wrong because it's not. Because it's a transcendental deduction. And anyone who conflates the two by claiming it is presuppositionalism is forever wrong. It can't be presuppism and transcendental. It just can't. At best, you could say it's related to it. That's all you can generally say. If it's presuppism, it can't be transcendental. If it's transcendental, it cannot be presuppism. It's that damn simple. There is no debating this or flexing over it. I'm stating a philosophical theory here, philosophical truth here. I'm calling those who disagree little shits and willingly repeating their mistakes. Because the stuff's right there in the formula laid out for you. Sure, again, it's related there. The tag is shortened as is related to presupposition, but it's fundamentally not. It cannot be. Period. Now, here's an example of a transcendental deductive system that led up to Hoppe's argumentation ethics that this video is centered around. Let's go into that a little bit. It's called discourse ethics. It's a cognitive theory, meta-ethics theory, and transcendental deduction system that tries to establish normative or ethical truths by analyzing each other's presuppositions or presupposings by arguing them back and forth through rational discourse, deductively analyze them in order to establish an ethics standard as is neutral, objective, mutually agreed upon, and as logical as possible. Or based around these discovered normative truths. And the transcendental argument system tries to establish basically that. Just establishing ethical truths by knowing what you're defining, arguing each other's presupposings in order to find out what you really mean deep down, deductively analyze them, and go from there. And by normative, I'm saying it's normative as in of relating to or determining norms or standards. Cognitive theories are theories and theorems consisting of being involving conscious intellectual activity such as thinking, reasoning, agency, what we consider will, remembering other aspects of intellectual functions and processes like perception, attention, forming and acquiring of knowledge, working, memory, judgment, evaluation, and computation, problem solving, decision making, comprehension, production of language, and so on and so forth. In other words, this partially immaterial phenomena acting on the material. In other words, cognition itself. Meta-ethics is the analysis of ethics and justification thereof. It branches into the knowledge philosophy, also known as epistemology, and it has in all sorts of branches of metaphysics too. It's another fundamental philosophical area. Now, argumentation ethics is an achievement of Hans Hermann Hoppe's response. It's based off of Hans Hermann Hoppe's response to discourse ethics after he abandoned leftism as a whole and understood one of his first mentors, the discourse ethics co-theorist Jürgen Habermas. Some of us call him Papa Hoppe out of affection and gratitude, realized that to argue is to act, and to act is to be subject to the philosophical study of action, and that presupposes certain norms from the start. The again, transcendental deductive analysis of this is what he realized will justify not only just the use of natural law, but libertarian and classical or true liberal ethics frameworks. Now, a lot of people talk about aggression. I tend to use it. I have my own definitions of aggression. Get that real quick for you. Damn gnats. Had a lot of weather coming in. Anyway. I got a little clip here that goes into Mr. Kinsella's definition of aggression. I'll play it, and I want you to go check his channel out. Please subscribe to the man. Very Very great guy. Brilliant mind. Brilliant mind. And I want you to listen to that first. Then I'll continue on from here. Enjoy.
Aggression means, and let me note, it does not mean coercion, it does not mean force, it doesn't mean violence, because defensive force and force used in restitution can be justified according to libertarians. So we're not against force, we're against aggression, or as Ayn Rand called it, the initiation of force, right? Or as libertarians explain, we are against the uninvited or unconsented to use of someone else's physical property that is invading the boundaries of their property. That is what we mean by opposing aggression.
Thank you for watching that little clip. The way as you can see, I pretty much define aggression as the unsolicited, unprovoked initiation of forceful interference or action onto others, and the unconsented and uninvited use of someone else's physical property that invades the boundaries of their property. Like, that's my main definition. That's my definition of it. So that's the aggression. Your body is your property. Simple as. So I stick to that one mostly, but I got a couple other ways of wording it. But yeah, they fit. They work pretty well. Aggressive coercion is the threat of aggression to force others into doing something they do not or cannot consent to properly. Yes, I'm going to mention about praxeology. Praxeology was initially a philosophical study of action that's been around the philosophical action that became known as praxeology in, like, I don't know what, the 17th, 16th, or 17th century was first coined. The term was first used. I meant to say was coined or used. But thanks to Alfred V. Espinoz, the modern definition of it is a philosophical study of purposeful action. It's all based on the reality that sapient humanoids act. Henceforth, shit happens. They act with their agency. Henceforth, shit happens. And the further realization that humans will use reasoning to justify their actions before, during, and after said actions. These realizations can be understood a priori as well as observed. So praxeology is one of the fundamental understandings that can bridge the mind to observable reality as well. And I'm going to give a little slight correction to Mr. Roderick T. Long. The fact is, Carl Menger pioneered the use of causal realist logical deduction as a baseline for figuring out a priori through thought experiments. Through thought experiments, what to look for when designing a means to conduct economic analyzing. Ludwig von Mises completed the intellectual Mengerian revolution. This was called, with his figuring out the implication of the concept of praxeology and his formulation of it and applying it to causal realist logical deductive systems of analysis. I'm bringing up these other concepts and their definings ahead of time to prep you for the formula itself. They all pretty much converge into it. Basically, Hans Hermann Hoppe sought inspiration from discourse ethics of Jürgen Habermas and Karl Otto Appel, but decided to go further and inject the truth that humans act and is subject to philosophical analysis of human actions, known as praxeology, and it's also goes further into just action, philosophy of action as a whole, not just praxeology. But the realization argues to act and is praxeological in nature, so that the realization that the argue is not only to act, but also to presuppose certain normative truths from the start. The main normative truth is it must imply self-ownership and the body of both the arguer and the listeners, as well as the homesteading of property rights. The homesteading of property right, basically, so that the arguers and listeners will be alive to listen to the argument and carry on. The argument for showing the the argument for justification of self-ownership is simple. All justification occurs in rational discourse, or arguing. B, that's A. B, argumentation presupposes the right to self-ownership. C, therefore it is not possible to justify ethics other than that of property rights without performatively being contradictory, self-contradictory. This argument does not fall into the guillotine as Hume's law precisely because it has no normative sentence, and therefore no rule has been derived from factual statements. There is the logical gap between is and ought statements which natural rights proponents have failed to bridge successfully, or let alone bypass some, and to successfully, except for advancing certain general remarks regarding the ultimate validity of the fact-value dichotomy. Here, the praxeological proof of the liberty framework has the advantage of offering a completely value-free justification of private property. It remains entirely in the realm of is statements and never tries to derive an ought from an is. The structure of the argument is A, justification is propositional. Justification, a priori true is statement. B, argumentation presupposes property in one's body in the homesteading principle, which is another a priori true is statement. And C, then no deviation from this ethic can be argumentatively justified, which is another a priori true is statement. Proof also offers a key to understanding the nature of the fact-value dichotomy. And I just went into what those are, like that the ought statements cannot be derived from is. Went over this. They belong to different logical realms. It is also clear, however, that one cannot even state that there are facts and values and no propositional exchanges exist. This practice of propositional exchanges in turn presupposes the acceptance of the private property ethic is valid. In other words, cognition and truth-seeking as such have a normative foundation, and the normative foundation of which cognition and truth rest is a recognition of property rights of your body. And before I close this, I want to go over another little piece. It's been assumed, and I've argued with quote-unquote detractors of argumentation ethics, which most of the time is like, hey, could you try understanding this shit? Could you actually try comprehending it, or not, and without, could you try not being a fucktard? or try not being dishonest? Anyway. And no, universal preferential behavior is not AE. It's a parody of AE at best. But it's similar, not really. This goes a little bit deeper than it. Also, when someone calls himself a philosopher, you better press X to doubt. Just giving you a little tip there. Now, this genetic fallacy has been pulled on me and others that follow Hoppe's works quite heavily, and it's fucking hilarious. Let me get rid of this genetic fallacy ahead of time. There has been a claim that Hoppe's a Marxist, basing it on a failure to attempt a failure at attempting a fucking genetic fallacy. If person 1 believed that subject A1 and A2, which I would say critical nonsense and Marxism, being A1 and A2, co-invented subject B, which being discourse ethics in this analogy, with person 2, then whoever claims that subject A and B are inherently connected, whoever claims that, show an actual argument. Actually show an actual proper argument to actually demonstrate how it could be connected, or if it actually is. If you claim that it is, demonstrate that it is. Good fucking luck. Now, if person 3 saw inspiration from person 1 and person two's subject B, right, discourse ethics, and realized that subject B did not need to be used for person 1 and person 2's subject A, or was contradictory to use subject B to try justifying subjects A1 and A2, I meant to say, I'm sorry. That exact realization further inspired person 3 to invent subject C, which then claims that person 3 must be for... So, okay, but so that basically means the claims that person 3 must be for subject A1 or A2 or both is false until actually proven. As in not asserted that it's proven or self-evident, actually demonstrate how these claims are supposedly true as in a given actual substantiation. Technically the claim that this was a combo of multiple fallacies. It was a failure at trying to make a genetic fallacy. It was bold-faced lying. It's false assertions. Guilt by association. Mott and Bailey. Fallacy of division. False equivocation. Poo-pooing. And you know, on the ones who've said this to me was denial of half of fucking argumentation ethics origins, like or say I should say a big chunk of it, not half, because you know their definition of praxeology were fucking comical. These fuckwits could be trolled by quoting from Mises' human action to piss them off. Like, they really don't know the shit. But some of these said individuals have, and their cult followings have, cornered themselves into postmodernist, unironic postmodernist, post-structuralist solipsism bubbling, bubbles around themselves, and, you know. Oliver, you settle down. But yes, that's literally what they've done. They have gone into a postmodernist, post-structuralist solipsism-tism fest. I'm not giving names. I'm sure some of my subscribers who know about the past things know who they are. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna do a part 2, and it's gonna be shit flinging.